Look, I'm about to tell you something that'll make you question everything you think you know about what lives in the wilderness. This isn't some campfire story or internet hoax. This actually happened. A veteran helicopter pilot, flying routine missions over some of the most remote forest in Montana, saw something that shouldn't exist, and he got it all on camera. Here's the thing: we like to think we've got this planet figured out. Every inch mapped, every species catalogued, every mystery solved. But the reality? There are places so wild, so untouched, that even in 2024, we don't have a damn clue what's really out there. And sometimes, just sometimes, those places give up their secrets in ways that'll leave you lying awake at night. This story starts with a missing person case that went cold. 28-year-old guy, solo hiking trip, vanished without a trace. 8 months of searching turned up nothing. His family was desperate. The authorities had moved on. And then one random training flight changed everything. What the pilot saw that day, what he recorded, it's the kind of thing that gets locked away in classified files because nobody knows how the hell to explain it. But more than that, it raises questions that are honestly terrifying. Because if this thing exists, if it's real, then what else is out there that we don't know about? When you finish, if you think more people should hear this, hit like and share. Not for me, for them. This story makes you think differently about what's possible. Like, share, get this out there, screw that. If this hits you, spread it. Share with your group chats, family, whoever. Let's go viral. Here we go. So buckle up. This is going to get weird. It's going to get intense. And by the end, you're going to be looking at those woods outside your window a little differently. Jake Reeves had been flying search and rescue missions for the Montana State Patrol for 12 years. 12 years of pulling lost hikers off mountainsides, airlifting injured climbers, searching for missing kids who wandered too far from camp. He'd seen grizzlies, elk herds, mountain lions, wolves, every animal that called the Bitterroot Mountains home. Nothing, and I mean nothing, had prepared him for what he was about to witness. It was supposed to be a standard training flight. September afternoon, weather clear, visibility perfect. Jake was hovering at about 300 feet above the dense forest, running through some basic maneuvers with a rookie co-pilot who'd transferred in from Wyoming. The kind of flight where you're on autopilot, mind-wandering, maybe thinking about what you're having for dinner. Then he saw it. Movement below. Big movement. Jake's training kicked in automatically. His eyes locked onto the dark shape moving through the trees. At first, he thought grizzly. Had to be. But then his brain started processing what he was actually seeing, and every rational explanation just fell apart. The thing was massive. 8 feet tall, maybe more. Covered in dark brown hair that seemed to catch the sunlight filtering through the canopy. But here's what made Jake's blood run cold. It was walking upright. Not like a bear rearing up, but actually walking, moving through that dense forest like it owned the place. And it was carrying something. Something that looked unmistakably human. Holy shit, Jake muttered, his hand instinctively reaching for the radio. The rookie next to him hadn't seen it yet. Kid was focused on his instrument panel, probably trying to impress Jake with his attention to detail. Jake adjusted the helicopter's position, angling for a better view. His mouth had gone completely dry. The creature below stopped in a small clearing. Jake could see it clearly now. Definitely bipedal. Definitely not a bear. The body it carried was wrapped in what looked like a green sleeping bag, and even from 300 feet up, Jake could make out hiking boots dangling from one end. His mind was racing. 12 years of flying these mountains. 12 years of knowing every animal, every pattern, every normal thing that happened in this wilderness. This wasn't normal. This wasn't anything he'd ever seen or heard of, or even imagined. Jake's hand was shaking as he keyed the radio. Base, this is Hawk 5. I need you to patch me through to Detective Garrett, immediately. Static crackled. Hawk 5, this is Base. Garrett's handling the Martinez case. What's your situation? Jake's throat felt like sandpaper. Ryan Martinez, 28 years old, software engineer from Bozeman. vanished 8 months ago during a solo hiking trip along the Clearwater Ridge Trail. His car had been found at the trailhead, his initial campsite located and abandoned. After that, nothing. No trace, no clues, no body. Until now, base. I think I just found our missing hiker, Jake said, his voice tight, but you're not going to believe how. He watched the creature below, his mind struggling to accept what his eyes were seeing. The thing had stopped moving. It stood there in the clearing, and Jake could see its face clearly enough to know this wasn't any known animal. The facial structure was wrong, too human-like, but primitive, ancient. Hawk 5. Can you repeat that? Did you say you located Martinez? Jake's hands worked the controls automatically while his brain tried to catch up. Base, I'm going to need you to scramble a full search and rescue team to my coordinates and get me Detective Garrett on the radio right now. I'm going to try to maintain visual contact. The creature looked up at the helicopter. Even from 300 feet, Jake could see it clearly. It wasn't afraid, wasn't startled. It just looked like it was considering what to do next. Then it started moving again, and Jake's jaw dropped. The speed was impossible. This thing moved through terrain that would stop most animals cold, covering 30 or 40 feet with each bound. It stepped over fallen logs like they were pebbles, ducked under low branches with fluid precision. Jake had to push the helicopter forward just to keep pace, and he was flying a damn helicopter. Jesus Christ, the rookie breathed. He'd finally seen it. Jake activated the training camera. Everything was being recorded now. Good. Because nobody was going to believe this without proof. Hawk 5, this is Detective Garrett. What's your situation? Jake had worked with Garrett before. The guy was thorough, skeptical, not given to drama. How the hell could Jake possibly explain what he was seeing? Detective, I'm tracking a large animal carrying what appears to be human remains through the forest, approximately 12 miles northeast of the Clearwater Ridge Trail. The animal matches no known species in this region. Pause. Long pause. Hawk 5. When you say large animal, what exactly are we talking about? Jake watched the creature navigate around a steep ravine, moving with obvious intelligence. It knew where it was going. Detective, I need you to understand that I've been flying these mountains for over a decade. I know every animal that lives in this forest. This is something else entirely. Jake, just tell me what you're seeing. Deep breath. Here goes nothing. It's bipedal, approximately 8 feet tall, covered in brown hair. It's carrying what appears to be a human body in hiking gear, and it's moving through terrain that would challenge an experienced hiker at a speed I can barely match in the helicopter. The silence stretched so long, Jake wondered if he'd lost the connection. Finally, Hawk 5, are you certain about what you're observing? Detective, I'm recording everything. The camera's been running since I first spotted it. Whatever this thing is, it knows exactly where it's going. Below, the creature had reached a steep cliff face. Jake expected it to turn, find another route. Instead, it started climbing. Not carefully, not slowly, but with the same fluid confidence it had shown moving through the forest. Its hands and feet found holes Jake couldn't even see from his vantage point. Base. The subject is now climbing a near-vertical rock face. I'm going to need that search team equipped for technical rescue operations. Jake maneuvered closer to the cliff, fighting the wind shear that bounced off the rock. The creature was already halfway up the 100-foot cliff, still carrying its burden. Whatever was wrapped in that green material, and Jake was pretty damn sure it was Ryan Martinez's sleeping bag, the creature handled it like it weighed nothing. Hawk 5, what's your fuel status? Jake checked his gauges. Shit. Base, I've got about 40 minutes of flight time remaining, but I don't think I'm going to be able to follow this thing much longer. The creature reached the top of the cliff and disappeared into another section of dense forest. Jake pulled up and over, searching for movement in the trees below. The forest here was older, the trees taller and more densely packed. Finding anything under that canopy was going to be a nightmare. Wait, there. Movement near a dark opening in the hillside, a cave. The creature emerged into a small clearing in front of the cave entrance. For the first time since Jake had started tracking it, the thing stopped and remained still. It gently, and Jake couldn't believe he was using that word, gently placed its burden on the ground near the cave mouth. Jake adjusted his altitude, trying to get a better angle. Through his binoculars, he could see more clearly. The body was definitely wrapped in a green sleeping bag, same color as the one Ryan Martinez had been carrying when he disappeared. But something was wrong with the scene below. The creature wasn't behaving like a predator with prey. Its movements were careful, almost reverent. Hawk 5, we've got your coordinates. Search team is mobilizing now, but it's going to take them at least 2 hours to reach that location on foot. Detective Garrett, are you monitoring this? I'm here, Jake. What's the creature doing now? Jake watched as the thing gathered stones, arranging them in a rough circle around the wrapped body. The behavior was completely wrong for any animal he'd ever heard of. Detective, this is going to sound crazy, but it looks like it's conducting some kind of ritual. It's arranging stones around the body. Jake, I need you to be very specific about what you're recording. This could be crucial evidence in a homicide investigation. Homicide. The word hit Jake like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on the impossibility of what he was seeing that he'd lost sight of the human tragedy at the center of it. Ryan Martinez had been somebody's son, somebody's friend. His disappearance had devastated his family. 8 months of hoping, praying, searching. Detective, the creature appears to be placing the body in some kind of stone circle. The behavior suggests intelligence and possibly ritualistic purpose. This isn't random animal behavior. The creature finished its arrangement and stood back from the stone circle. It remained motionless for several minutes. Jake found himself holding his breath, afraid that any sound might disturb whatever was happening below. Then the creature did something that made Jake's skin crawl. It looked directly up at the helicopter and raised one massive arm. Not in threat, not in fear, but in what could only be described as acknowledgment. Like it knew Jake was watching. Like it understood. Jesus Christ, Jake whispered. Hawk 5, did you say something? Jake composed himself, trying to keep his voice steady. Detective, the subject has acknowledged the helicopter's presence. It's displaying behavioral patterns consistent with higher intelligence. Jake, I need you to maintain your position until the ground team arrives. Do not approach any closer. Understood, Detective. But I need to tell you my fuel situation is becoming critical. The creature moved toward the cave entrance. Before disappearing inside, it turned back toward the helicopter one final time. Even at 300 feet, Jake could see its face clearly. There was something in its expression that was disturbingly human. Then it vanished into the darkness. Jake circled the area, marking coordinates and taking note of landmarks that would help the ground team. The wrapped body remained in its stone circle, clearly visible from the air. Base, I'm going to need to return for fuel in 15 minutes. The subject has entered what appears to be a cave system. The body has been left in the clearing. Copy, Hawk 5. Ground team has your coordinates and will be on site in approximately 90 minutes. Jake took one last look at the scene below. The green sleeping bag in the circle of stones looked so small from this height. A reminder of just how vast and wild this country remained, despite humanity's best efforts to map and control every inch of it. During the flight back to base, Jake's mind was racing. His training told him to stick to observable facts, but the implications of those facts were staggering. If what he'd recorded was real, and he had video proof that it was it, would change everything people thought they knew about the Bitterroot Mountains, about what lived in the deepest parts of the forest. But more immediately, it might finally give Ryan Martinez's family the answers they'd been desperate for. Jake landed at the base helipad and immediately sought out Detective Garrett, who'd driven over from Missoula. Garrett was a tall, thin man in his 50s with graying hair and the kind of weathered face that came from decades of police work. The kind of guy who'd seen it all and didn't rattle easily. Jake, I need to see that footage immediately. They watched the recording together in the base communications room. Jake had seen it all firsthand, but viewing it on a monitor made it seem even more surreal. The creature's size and speed were clearly visible. So was its intelligence, its purpose. Jake, I've got to ask you this directly. Garrett's voice was careful. Is there any possibility this could be a hoax? Someone in a costume? Jake had been expecting the question. Detective, look at the way it moves through that terrain. Look at the speed it maintains while carrying what's probably a 160-pound burden. Look at how it climbs that cliff face. I don't know of any human being who could fake what we're seeing here. Garrett was quiet for a long time, replaying certain sections of the video over and over. The clothing on the body. Can you enhance that image? The base's technical team worked on improving the resolution of keyframes. When they finished, the green sleeping bag was clearly visible, along with what appeared to be blue jeans and hiking boots. The description matched perfectly with what Ryan Martinez had been wearing when he disappeared. Garrett stood up. Jake, I need you to fly me back out there. The ground team isn't going to reach that location until after dark. Detective, are you sure that's wise? We don't know if that thing is still in the area. Garrett's expression was grim. Ryan Martinez's parents have been calling me every week for 8 months. If there's a chance that's their son, I need to know today. The flight back took 20 minutes. As they approached the cliff area, Jake felt his stomach tighten with anticipation. What if the creature came back? What if there were more of them? The clearing was exactly as he'd left it. The stone circle was clearly visible, the wrapped body undisturbed. There's no sign of the creature, Jake reported as he circled the area. Can you set down anywhere near there? Jake studied the terrain. There's a meadow about a quarter-mile east that might work. But detective, if that thing comes back while we're on the ground… Jake, I've been a cop for 26 years. I've seen things that would make your hair curl. But I've also learned that the families of victims deserve answers, no matter how strange those answers might be. Jake found a landing spot in the meadow and set the helicopter down. The silence that followed the shutdown of the rotors was profound. The Bitterroot forest was quiet in a way that city dwellers never experienced, a deep stillness broken only by the distant sound of wind in the trees. They hiked toward the cliff face, following Jake's GPS coordinates. The forest here felt different. There was a sense of age, of wildness, that seemed to press in from all sides. Jake kept scanning the trees, his hand instinctively moving to the service weapon he'd borrowed from base. How much further? Garrett asked. Should be just ahead. They emerged into the clearing, and both men stopped dead. The stone circle was there, exactly as Jake had filmed it. But the wrapped body was gone. Jake, are you certain this is the right location? Jake checked his GPS again. His hands were shaking. This is definitely the spot. Look, you can see the stones are still arranged exactly like they were in the video. Garrett approached the stone circle carefully, pulling on latex gloves. The stones have definitely been moved recently. You can see where they were placed on top of the existing ground cover. Jake looked around the clearing nervously. Whatever had moved that body could still be close, could be watching them right now. Garrett was examining the ground inside the stone circle. There are clear impressions here where something heavy was lying. And look at this. He held up a small piece of green fabric that had apparently torn off when the body was moved. That's from a sleeping bag, Jake said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. Same color as the one Ryan Martinez was carrying. Garrett bagged the fabric sample. Jake, I need you to document this entire area with your camera. Every stone, every impression, every detail. As Jake worked, Garrett examined the cave entrance. The opening goes back further than I can see. We're going to need spelunking equipment and a full technical team to explore it properly. Detective, are you thinking the creature took the body into the cave? Garrett was quiet for a moment. Jake, I don't know what to think. But I know that piece of fabric is going to be tested for DNA. And if it matches Ryan Martinez, we're going to have to figure out what the hell happened here. A sound from the forest made both men freeze. It was deep and resonant, almost like a horn being blown, but with an organic quality that made it clear it came from a living throat. The sound echoed through the trees, primal and ancient. "We need to leave. Now." Jake didn't wait for Garrett to respond. He started back toward the helicopter. They made it back without incident, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched during the entire hike. Several times he'd caught movement in his peripheral vision, but when he turned to look, there was nothing there. During the flight back to base, Garrett was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke up over the radio. "Jake, I need you to understand how sensitive this situation is. Until we have definitive answers, this information cannot become public." "I understand, Detective. But what happens if the DNA matches Ryan Martinez? Then we're going to have to figure out how to explain to his family that we found evidence of their son in circumstances that challenge everything we think we know about reality." The lab results came back 3 days later. Jake was in the middle of a routine medical evacuation when Garrett called him. The detective's voice was tight, controlled in a way that told Jake the news wasn't good. "The fabric is definitely from Ryan Martinez's sleeping bag. DNA evidence confirms it was in contact with his body." Jake felt his stomach drop. "So it's confirmed. That was Ryan." "Yeah, it was him. What are you going to tell his family?" Long pause. "That's complicated. We're still figuring that out." Over the following weeks, Jake found himself flying over that area repeatedly. The clearing remained empty. The search team that eventually explored the cave found it extended deep into the hillside, with multiple chambers and passages, but they found no trace of Ryan Martinez's body. No sign of the creature. The official report listed Ryan Martinez as deceased, cause of death unknown. His family was told that fabric from his sleeping bag had been recovered, providing some closure. But the full circumstances remained classified. Jake kept flying his missions, but the Bitterroot forest looked different now. He found himself studying every shadow, every movement in the trees below. The official silence around what he'd witnessed felt like a weight that grew heavier each day. What the hell had he seen out there? What was that thing? And what had it done with Ryan's body? 3 months after the incident, Jake was flying a routine medical evacuation when his radio crackled with an unexpected transmission. "Hawk 5, this is base. We've got reports of a missing child in the same general area where you had that incident back in September. 10-year-old boy, separated from a family hiking group about 6 hours ago." Jake felt his blood turn to ice. "Base, confirm the coordinates." The location was less than 5 miles from the cave where the creature had disappeared. "Hawk 5, how soon can you be on scene?" Jake was already changing course. "Base, I'm 15 minutes out. Have ground teams been dispatched?" "Affirmative. But given the terrain and the fact that the child has been missing for 6 hours, they're requesting air support for the search." As Jake approached the search area, he found himself scanning not just for a lost child, but for any sign of the massive figure he'd tracked through these same forests months earlier. The thought of a 10-year-old boy alone in this wilderness was terrifying under normal circumstances. Given what Jake knew lived in these woods, it was almost unbearable. He spent 4 hours combing the forest below, working in coordination with 3 ground search teams. As the sun began to set, the chances of finding the boy alive were diminishing rapidly. Night temperatures in December could be fatal for someone without proper gear. "Hawk 5, this is Ground Team 2. We've got something here." The tension in the team leader's voice made Jake's skin crawl. "Ground Team 2, what's your status?" "We found what appears to be a child's jacket hanging from a tree branch about 12 feet off the ground. No way the kid could have put it there himself." Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "Ground Team 2, confirm your coordinates." The location was less than a mile from the cave. "Base, I'm moving to Ground Team 2's position." As Jake approached the coordinates, he could see the search team's flashlights through the trees. They were standing in a small clearing, looking up at something in the branches above. "Hawk 5, can you illuminate the area?" Jake activated the helicopter's searchlight, flooding the clearing with harsh white light. There, hanging from a branch that no human could reach without climbing equipment, was a small blue jacket. but it hadn't been thrown there randomly. It was carefully placed, draped over the branch, like someone had hung it there deliberately. Ground teams, be advised we may be dealing with something other than a standard lost child situation. Jake circled the area, expanding his search pattern. If the creature was involved, and every instinct in his body told him it was the child, could be anywhere within miles by now. That thing moved faster than anything he'd ever seen. Hawk 5, this is Ground Team 1. We've got fresh tracks here that don't match any known animal species. The radio chatter continued as the teams compared notes. Large footprints, impossible distances between stride markers, and most disturbing, signs that something had been moving through the forest carrying a burden. Jake felt sick. Was he about to witness the same tragedy that had befallen Ryan Martinez? Base, I need you to contact Detective Garrett immediately. Tell him we may have a situation related to the Martinez case. As if in response to his radio call, Jake spotted movement in the forest below. Something large was moving between the trees, but this time it wasn't running. It was walking slowly, deliberately. Base, I have visual contact with a large animal moving through the forest. Requesting instructions. Hawk 5, maintain distance but do not lose visual contact. Jake followed the creature as it made its way through the forest. Unlike the previous encounter, this seemed different. The movement was less urgent, more careful, and it didn't appear to be carrying anything. The creature led Jake to another clearing. This one centered around a large fallen tree. As Jake watched through his binoculars, the creature approached what appeared to be a small figure sitting against the fallen log. Jesus Christ, that's the kid, Jake breathed. The boy was alive, sitting upright, apparently unharmed. The creature approached him slowly, then gently lifted him from the ground. But instead of carrying him away into the darkness, it began walking back toward the search teams. Base, the missing child is alive and appears unharmed. The animal is carrying him toward the search team's location. Jake could hardly believe what he was seeing. The creature was returning the lost boy. Ground teams, be advised, the child is approaching your location from the northeast. Do not, I repeat, do not approach the animal that's carrying him. Let it complete its approach. Jake watched as the creature made its way through the forest toward the lights of the search teams. When it reached the edge of the clearing where the teams were located, it gently set the boy down on the ground. Then it quickly disappeared back into the darkness. The search teams rushed forward. The boy was found sitting at the edge of the clearing, cold and frightened, but otherwise completely unharmed. Jake landed near the search site and jumped out to check on the kid. The boy's name was Tommy Brennan, and he was wrapped in a thermal blanket, drinking hot chocolate one of the medics had given him. Tommy, can you tell us what happened? One of the search team leaders asked gently. The kid looked up, his eyes wide. A big furry man found me when it got dark. I was really scared and cold, but he kept me warm by the tree. He didn't hurt me. The jacket we found in the tree, Jake said. Do you know how it got up there? Tommy nodded. The furry man put it there. He made these sounds, like he was talking, and pointed at the sky. I think he wanted the helicopters to find us. Jake felt goosebumps rise on his arms. The creature had deliberately marked their location. It had kept the child safe and warm, then led rescuers to him. Jake flew Tommy and one of the medics back to base, where the child was reunited with his frantic parents. The official report attributed the boy's survival to luck and the dedication of the search teams. No mention was made of what had actually saved his life. Later that night, Jake met with Detective Garrett at an all-night diner in Missoula. The detective looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept in days. Jake, I've been thinking about what you witnessed today and what happened with Ryan Martinez. Garrett stirred his coffee absently. I think we're dealing with something that challenges our basic assumptions about intelligence and behavior in unknown species. Jake took a long drink of his own coffee, trying to process everything. Detective, that thing saved that kid's life. It could have just left him out there to die, but instead it kept him warm and led us to him. It hung his damn jacket in a tree so we could find them. Garrett nodded slowly. which suggests a level of moral reasoning that we don't associate with animals. Empathy, understanding of human vulnerability. He paused. But Jake, here's what worries me. If this creature saved the boy, what the hell happened to Ryan Martinez? Why was his situation different? It was the question that had been haunting Jake for months. The evidence suggested that the same creature, or one like it, had been involved in both incidents. But the outcomes couldn't have been more different. Maybe Martinez was already dead when it found him, Jake suggested. Maybe it was trying to give him some kind of burial. That stone circle, the way it arranged everything, it felt ceremonial. Or maybe, Garrett said quietly, there's more than one of these things. And they don't all have the same intentions. The thought sent a chill down Jake's spine. The idea of multiple unknown creatures living in the Bitterroot forests, some benevolent and some potentially dangerous, was almost too much to contemplate. Garrett pulled out a folder from his briefcase. I've been doing some research. Off the books, obviously. There have been other incidents over the years. Unexplained disappearances in this region going back decades. Some bodies found in strange circumstances. Others never found at all. You think they're all connected? I don't know, but I'm starting to think we're not alone out here, and we never have been. Over the following year, Jake continued his search and rescue work, but he approached each flight over the deep forest with a new awareness. He'd seen enough to know that humans weren't alone in these mountains, and that the relationship between the species sharing this wilderness was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The footage of the creature carrying Ryan Martinez's body remained classified, locked away in files that few people would ever see. But Jake carried the memory of what he'd witnessed, and the knowledge that somewhere in the vast Bitterroot forest, something ancient and intelligent continued to watch and wait. He thought about it constantly. What were they? Where did they come from? How many were there? And why did some of them seem to help humans, while others didn't? It was April when things took another turn. Jake was finishing up a routine supply drop at a remote ranger station when his radio crackled to life. Hawk 5. This is base. We need you to divert to coordinates I'm sending now. We've got a situation. Jake checked the coordinates as they came through. His heart sank. It was the same general area again, the cave system, the place where everything had started. Base, what's the situation? A research team went into that cave system 3 days ago. They were supposed to check in every 12 hours. We haven't heard from them in over 36 hours. How many people? 4. 2 scientists, 2 guides. Jake changed course, his mind racing. A research team in the caves. What the hell had they been researching? Base, what was the nature of their research? There was a pause. That's classified. Hawk 5. Jake felt a surge of anger. Classified. Are you kidding me? If I'm going to be flying into this situation, I need to know what I'm dealing with. Another pause. Then, stand by for Detective Garrett. Garrett's voice came through a moment later. Jake, the research team was sent to investigate the cave system after what you witnessed. They were looking for evidence of what you saw. And you didn't think to tell me? It was need to know. And now you need to know. Jake, they found something. Their last transmission before they went silent, they said they'd found structures. Deliberate constructions deep in the cave system. And they said they weren't alone down there. Jake's hands tightened on the controls. Structures. Constructions. That meant intelligence. That meant the creatures weren't just animals. They had a society, a culture, maybe even a civilization hidden away in those caves. What do you need me to do? We've got a tactical team mobilizing, but they're 2 hours out. I need you to do a flyover. See if you can spot any signs of the research team. Maybe they made it out of the caves and they're just lost in the forest. And if they're still in the caves, then we wait for the tactical team. Nobody goes into those caves alone, Jake. Not after what we know is down there. Jake approached the area carefully, scanning the forest below. The clearing where he'd first seen the creature was empty. The cave entrance was dark, giving nothing away. He widened his search pattern, looking for any sign of the missing researchers. Nothing. No camping equipment, no people, no distress signals. Base, I'm not seeing anything from the air. If they're out here, they're well hidden. Copy that, Hawk 5. Maintain your position until the tactical team arrives. Jake circled the area for another hour, his fuel gauge dropping steadily. He was about to head back to refuel when he saw movement near the cave entrance. A figure emerged from the darkness, human-sized, stumbling. Base, I've got visual on what appears to be one of the researchers. Single individual, appears to be in distress, emerging from the cave entrance. Jake brought the helicopter lower, trying to get a better look. It was a woman, mid-30s, wearing torn hiking gear. She was limping badly, and when she looked up at the helicopter, Jake could see the terror on her face. She was running from something in the cave. Base, the individual appears to be fleeing from something. I'm going to attempt to land and extract. Negative, Hawk 5. Wait for the tactical team. But Jake was already looking for a place to set down. The woman had collapsed at the edge of the clearing, and she wasn't getting up. If he waited for the tactical team, she might be dead. He found a flat spot about 50 yards from the cave and brought the helicopter down fast. The moment the skids touched ground, he was out and running toward the woman. She was conscious, but barely. Blood covered one side of her face, and her leg was bent at a wrong angle. What happened? Jake asked, kneeling beside her. Where are the others? Dead, she gasped. They're all dead. We went too deep. We found their home. They didn't want us there. Who didn't want you there? The creatures. There are dozens of them, Jake. Dozens. Living in the caves. We stumbled into some kind of, I don't know, nursery? There were young ones. And when the adults found us, she broke off, coughing. Blood flecked her lips. We need to get you out of here, Jake said, starting to lift her. A sound from the cave entrance made him freeze. That same deep, resonant call he'd heard months ago. But this time, it was different. This time it sounded angry. 3 massive figures emerged from the cave. Not 1, 3. They were similar to the creature Jake had seen before, 8 feet tall, covered in dark hair, moving with that same fluid intelligence. But their body language was completely different. These weren't gentle. These weren't careful. These were pissed. Shit, 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 Jake muttered, trying to lift the injured woman. She cried out in pain. The creatures advanced slowly, deliberately. One of them was carrying something, a pack, Jake realized. One of the researchers' packs. I'm sorry, the woman whispered. We shouldn't have gone in there. We shouldn't have disturbed them. Jake activated his radio. Base, I need immediate backup at my location. Multiple hostile subjects approaching. I'm attempting extraction of the injured researcher. He managed to get the woman onto her feet, supporting most of her weight. They'd covered maybe 10 yards when one of the creatures moved with that impossible speed, cutting off their path to the helicopter. Up close, Jake could see the intelligence in its eyes, the awareness, but also the anger. The creature held up the pack, then threw it at Jake's feet. The message was clear. Take your things and leave. Don't come back. Jake nodded slowly, not breaking eye contact. We're going. We're leaving. I'm sorry we disturbed your home. Did it understand him? Jake had no idea, but the creature seemed to relax slightly. Then one of the others made a sound, a series of grunts and whistles that sounded almost like language. The first creature responded in kind. They were communicating, talking, deciding what to do. Jake, the woman whispered, in the caves. We took pictures, video. It's all on my camera, in the pack. Jake looked at the pack at his feet, then at the creatures. If he reached for it, would they see it as a threat? Slowly, carefully, he bent down and picked up the pack. The creatures watched but didn't move. Thank you, Jake said quietly. We're going now. We won't come back. He helped the woman toward the helicopter, moving as slowly and non-threateningly as possible. The creatures watched but didn't follow. Jake got the woman into the helicopter and fired up the rotors. As they lifted off, He looked back at the clearing. The three creatures stood there, watching them go. One of them, the same one that had thrown the pack, raised its arm in that same gesture of acknowledgment Jake had seen months before. A warning, a message, an understanding. Stay away. The tactical team arrived 30 minutes after Jake had evacuated the injured researcher. By the time they reached the cave, the creatures were gone. A search of the cave system found no trace of them, no structures, no evidence of habitation, nothing. It was as if they'd vanished into the mountain itself. The injured researcher, her name was Dr. Sarah Chen, spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Jake visited her once she was stable enough for visitors. "Did you look at the camera?" she asked. "The footage from inside the caves?" Jake nodded. He and Garrett had watched it together. The video showed exactly what Dr. Chen had described: a massive chamber deep in the cave system, with what appeared to be constructed shelters made from stone and wood, and dozens of the creatures, including juveniles, a community, a family, a civilization. "What are you going to do with the footage?" Dr. Chen asked. "Same thing we're doing with mine," Jake said. "Locking it away, keeping it classified. Why? Because if that footage gets out, if people know what's living in those caves, do you know what will happen? There'll be thousands of people flooding into these mountains. Hunters, tourists, researchers, media. That community will be destroyed." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "The others who were with me, the ones who didn't make it out, they died because we invaded their home. We crossed a line we shouldn't have crossed. I'm sorry about your colleagues. They knew the risks. We all did." She looked at Jake. "But now what? Do we just pretend they don't exist? Do we just leave them alone?" "That's exactly what we do," Jake said. "We leave them the hell alone." Detective Garrett came to Jake's house a week later. He looked older, more tired than Jake had ever seen him. "I'm retiring," Garrett said without preamble. "Effective end of the month." "What? Why?" Garrett pulled out a folder. "Because I've spent the last year investigating this situation, and I've uncovered things that make me question everything I thought I knew about this region, about this country." He opened the folder. Inside were dozens of reports, spanning decades. Missing persons, unexplained deaths, strange sightings, all from the same general area of the Bitterroot Mountains. "There's a pattern," Garrett said. "Every 10, 15 years, there's a cluster of incidents. And then things go quiet for a while, like they're trying to avoid us, like they only interact with humans when they have to." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we've been sharing this wilderness with an intelligent species for longer than we've been keeping records. And most of the time, they've been actively avoiding us. The incidents we know about, they're the exceptions, not the rule." Jake looked through the reports. Some of them went back to the 1800s. Indigenous peoples in the area had legends about mountain people who lived in the deep forests. Early settlers had reported similar sightings. "So what do we do with this information?" Garrett closed the folder. "Nothing. We do nothing. Because the moment this becomes public, it's over for them. And maybe for us too. Who knows how they'd react to a full-scale human invasion of their territory? You really think they could be a threat?" "I think they could be if we pushed them. But I also think they've been showing remarkable restraint. Think about it, Jake. How many people go missing in these mountains every year? How many of those disappearances could they be responsible for if they wanted to be? So the incidents we know about are either accidents, humans stumbling into places they shouldn't have gone, or something else, something we don't understand yet." "Like what?" Garrett shook his head. "I don't know. But I've been thinking about Ryan Martinez. The way that creature handled his body, the stone circle, the ritual behavior. What if Martinez was already dead when it found him? What if it was trying to, I don't know, give him last rites, honor him in some way? And Tommy Brennan, the kid who got saved, that's easier to explain. A child in distress. Any intelligent being with empathy would help." Jake thought about the creatures he'd seen near the cave, their anger when their home had been invaded, their mercy in letting him and Dr. Chen escape. "They're not so different from us, are they?" "No," Garrett said quietly. "They're not. And that's what scares me most. Jake continued flying search and rescue missions over the Bitterroot Mountains, but he flew with a new understanding. The wilderness below wasn't empty. It was inhabited by an ancient intelligence that had learned to coexist with humans by remaining hidden. He never saw the creatures again. Sometimes he thought he caught glimpses, movement in the trees, shadows that seemed too large, but nothing concrete, nothing he could prove. The footage from his camera remained classified, locked away in government archives that most people didn't even know existed. Dr. Chen's footage met the same fate. The official story was that her research team had been caught in a cave collapse. The bodies of her colleagues were never recovered. Tommy Brennan grew up to become a wilderness guide. Jake heard he sometimes told the story of being saved by a furry man when he was a kid, but most people dismissed it as a child's imagination or a misremembered dream. Ryan Martinez's family held a memorial service with the small amount of physical evidence they'd been given the torn piece of sleeping bag. They never got full answers about what had happened to their son. Jake attended the service, carrying the weight of knowing the truth but being unable to share it. Sometimes, during his flights, Jake would think about that moment when the creature had raised its arm in acknowledgment, that gesture of understanding between two intelligent species, a recognition that they shared this wilderness, and that maybe, just maybe, they could coexist if both sides respected boundaries. He thought about the stone circle in the clearing, the careful way the creature had placed Ryan's body, the gentleness with which it had carried Tommy Brennan, the anger when Dr. Chen's team had invaded their home. They weren't monsters. They weren't animals. They were people. Different from humans, but people nonetheless, with their own culture, their own society, their own moral code, and humanity's response to classify the evidence, hide the truth, and pretend they didn't exist. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe the world wasn't ready to know that it shared the planet with another intelligent species. Maybe it never would be. One evening, about 2 years after the initial incident, Jake was sitting on his porch, watching the sunset over the mountains. His phone rang. Detective Garrett, even though the man had been retired for over a year. "Jake, I need to tell you something." "What's up?" "I'm dying. Cancer. Doctors say I've got maybe 6 months." Jake felt his chest tighten. "Jesus, Frank, I'm so sorry." "Don't be. I've had a good run. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling because I want you to know that I've been keeping records. Everything we discovered about those creatures. Everything we learned. It's all documented, and when I die, it's going to be released." "What?" "Frank, you can't. I can, and I will. Humanity deserves to know the truth, Jake. We're not alone. We've never been alone. And hiding that truth, it's not right." "But what about the creatures? What happens to them when people find out?" "That's why I'm calling you. I need you to understand something. The information I'm releasing, it's not specific. No locations, no coordinates, nothing that would allow people to find them. Just the evidence that they exist. The proof that we share this planet with another intelligent species. Why? Because maybe, just maybe, knowing they exist will make people think twice about how we treat this wilderness. About what we're destroying when we clear-cut forests and build developments in wild areas. Maybe it'll make us better stewards of the land. Or maybe it'll start a hunt. People trying to capture them, study them, exploit them. Maybe. But I have to believe that humanity is better than that. That we're capable of learning, of growing, of showing the same respect and restraint that these creatures have shown us for centuries." Jake was quiet for a long time. "When? After I'm gone. I've set it up with a lawyer. The documents will be released to select media outlets and scientific organizations, peer-reviewed journals, serious people who will treat the information with the respect it deserves." "Frank, I know you don't agree with this, but Jake, I've spent my entire life in law enforcement believing that the truth matters, that people deserve answers. I can't die keeping this secret. I won't." Garrett died 5 months later. True to his word, the documents were released shortly after his funeral. The world didn't believe it at first. The footage was dismissed as elaborate hoaxes. The reports were called fabrications. Jake's testimony was questioned, his credibility attacked, but then other people started coming forward. Other pilots, other forest rangers, other law enforcement officials, all with their own encounters, their own footage, their own stories. The evidence became overwhelming. The creatures, scientists started calling them Homo sapiens sylvanus. Forest humans were real, and the world had to grapple with what that meant. 3 years after Garrett's death, Jake was asked to speak at a United Nations Assembly on Intelligent Non-Human Species. Representatives from every nation gathered to discuss what humanity's response should be to the confirmed existence of the forest humans. Jake stood at the podium, looking out at the assembled dignitaries, scientists, and policymakers. "I've been asked to share my experiences," he began, "to tell you what I witnessed in the Bitterroot Mountains. But before I do that, I want you to understand something fundamental." He pulled up the video footage on the large screen behind him. The creature carrying Ryan Martinez's body, the stone circle, the deliberate, careful movements. This is not an animal. This is a person. Different from us, yes, but a person with intelligence, with culture, with morality. A person who understands death and honors it. A person who saves lost children. A person who asks only to be left alone. He showed more footage. Tommy Brennan being carried to safety. The creatures at the cave entrance, angry but merciful. For centuries, they've been avoiding us, hiding from us. And when we've stumbled into their territory, most of the time they've shown remarkable restraint. They could have wiped us out. They could have fought back. Instead, they've retreated further into the wilderness, trying to maintain their existence in an ever-shrinking world. Jake paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. So now we have a choice. We can do what humanity has always done: encroach, exploit, destroy. We can turn their homes into tourist attractions. We can hunt them down for study. We can treat them like curiosities instead of people. Or we can do something different. We can recognize their right to exist, their right to their land, their right to privacy and autonomy. We can establish protected zones where they can live without fear of human interference. He looked directly at the camera, knowing this speech was being broadcast worldwide. They've been our neighbors for millennia. They've been the better neighbor. Now it's time for us to be worthy of sharing this planet with them. The UN Assembly voted overwhelmingly to establish protected zones across North America, vast swaths of wilderness, where human development would be strictly forbidden. The Bitterroot Mountains were among the first areas designated. Tourism was banned. Research was heavily restricted and required approval from international committees. Anyone caught violating the protected zones faced severe penalties. It wasn't perfect. There were violations, conflicts, incidents. But humanity, for once in its history, was trying to do better. Jake retired from search and rescue the following year. He bought a small cabin on the edge of the protected zone, close enough to the wilderness to feel connected, but far enough to respect boundaries. Sometimes, on clear nights, he'd sit on his porch and watch the dark forest below. And sometimes, just sometimes, he'd see movement in the trees, a shadow that seemed too large, a figure that walked upright. He never tried to approach, never tried to film, never tried to make contact. He'd learned his lesson. Some mysteries were meant to remain mysteries. Some neighbors preferred to be left alone. But he'd take out his guitar, a hobby he'd picked up in retirement, and play. Nothing fancy, just simple melodies that drifted across the valley into the dark forest. And once, just once, he heard a response. A deep, resonant call from the wilderness. Not angry, not threatening, just acknowledging. One neighbor greeting another across the divide. Jake smiled and kept playing. Years later, Jake's granddaughter asked him to tell her the story again. The story of the creature in the forest. She was 10 years old, the same age Tommy Brennan had been when he was rescued. Old enough to understand, young enough to still believe in wonder. "Did you ever see them again, Grandpa?" she asked, curled up on his lap. "Not directly," Jake said. "But I know they're there, out in the deep forest, living their lives just like we live ours. Do you think they know we're trying to protect them now? Jake thought about the gesture of acknowledgement, the raised arm, the understanding in those ancient eyes. Yeah, sweetheart, I think they know. Are they dangerous? Only if you don't respect them. Only if you invade their home without permission. But if you leave them alone, if you respect their space, then no, they're not dangerous. They're just different. I want to study them when I grow up, she declared, but in a nice way. Not invading or anything, just learning about them from far away. Jake smiled. That sounds like a good plan. The world needs more people who want to understand rather than exploit. She fell asleep in his arms, and Jake carried her to bed. When he returned to the porch, he looked out at the dark forest one more time. Somewhere out there, in caves and clearings humans would never see, an ancient civilization continued to exist. They had survived ice ages and human expansion. They had adapted, hidden, persevered. And now, finally, humanity was giving them the space to simply be. It wasn't a perfect ending. There would be challenges ahead, conflicts over resources, accidental encounters. The inevitable tension that came from two intelligent species sharing limited space, but it was a beginning, a chance to do things differently. Jake raised his hand in that gesture he'd seen twice before, a salute to the wilderness, a promise to keep respecting boundaries. In the darkness of the forest, nothing moved, nothing responded, but Jake felt, somehow, that the message had been received. Two species, sharing one planet, different but equal, separate but aware, learning to coexist in a world that had room for both, if only humans chose to make space. That was the hope, anyway. That was the dream. And for Jake Reeves, who had witnessed the impossible and lived to tell about it, that dream was worth protecting. He went inside, turned off the porch light, and left the wilderness to its rightful inhabitants. Some things, he'd learned, were bigger than human understanding. Some mysteries were meant to endure, and some neighbors were worth having, even if you never saw their faces. Especially then,